The pupillary light reflex is an autonomic reflex that regulates the amount of light that goes into the eye. The light reflex is the primary determinant of pupil size, with increased light causing the pupil to constrict and reduce the amount of light that reaches the retina. The pupillary light reflex enables the eye to adjust the amount of light reaching the retina, and it shields the photoreceptors from bright lights. It does this by adjusting the pupil's diameter according to the intensity of the light. What this accomplishes is it enables the eye to see in a wide range of light levels. The pupillary light reflex constricts the pupil in response to light, and through this, adjusts the amount of light that reaches the retina. Pupillary constriction takes place through the innervation of the iris sphincter muscle, which is controlled by the parasympathetic system. Change in pupillary size is primarily due to varying influence in the parasympathetic fibers of the oculomotor nerve. The sympathetic is subordinate in this respect. Like other autonomic nuclei, the Edinger-Westphal receives an input from the hypothalamus. The sphincter serves as the constrictor, and the dilator pupillae, which is the constricted, are responsible for controlling the diameter of the pupil. The dilator pupillae has the circular arrangement in the iris and is managed by the parasympathetic nervous system. To activate the pupillary light reflex, optic fibers of the optic tract synapse in the pretectal olivary nucleus of the pretectal area, rather than in the lateral geniculate nucleus. The pretectal olivary nucleus projects directly to the ipsilateral Edinger-Westphal nucleus and to the contralateral Edinger-Westphal nucleus via the posterior commissure. East Edinger-Westphal nucleus projects to the ipsilateral ciliary ganglion. The ciliary ganglion sends short ciliary nerves to innervate the sphincter pupillae muscles to produce pupillary constriction. Most of the short ciliary nerves innervate the ciliary muscle of the ciliary body, which assists in the accommodation reflex, rather than the sphincter pupillae muscles for the pupillary light reflex. The pupillary light reflex can be divided into three main components. The first component is the eye with the photosensitive retinal ganglion cells. Then there are the optic nerves, which are a necessary part of the visual pathway. Finally, we have the pretectal nucleus, which has the job of mediating the constriction of the pupil. The pupillary light reflex can be further divided into two pathways, based on the clinical manifestations of the defects in this reflex. The Afrin Pathway is made of both the retinal cells that project to the pretectum as well as the recipient neurons, which project bilaterally to the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. The Afrin Pathway is made of the preganglionic pupilloconstriction fibers of the Edinger-Westphal nucleus and their postganglionic recipient neurons in the ciliary ganglion, which project to the sphincter muscle of the iris. The process of the pupillary light reflex starts with the retinal ganglion cells of the eye. It conveys sensory information through the optic nerve, and a proportion of axons project to synapse at the pretectal nucleus and bilaterally projects, deviating from synapsing at the lateral genetic nucleus. Then add nuclei parasympathetic fibers from adding of vespal nuclei before traveling with the oculomotor nerve to innervate the ciliary ganglia. Then the sequence ends with the short ciliary nerves projecting to innervate the sphincter pupillae muscle in order to contract it. This leads to constriction of both pupils. When light enters a person's eye, the eye the light enters experiences what is called a direct reflex, and the opposite eye has a consensual reflex. Pupil constriction during a consensual reflex occurs due to the parasympathetic action of the pupillary sphincter muscle of each eye. The direct reflex is present in all vertebrates. It is the constriction of the pupil in the same eye that has stimulated with light. The consensual reflex is the constriction of the pupil in the eye opposite to the eye stimulated with light. In mammals with laterally placed eyes like rabbits, the direct reflex is more pronounced than the consensual reflex. However, mammals with frontally placed eyes, such as humans, the direct and consensual reflexes are equal.